Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your mowers will practically build themselves.
Hello folks, it's Mad Dog Merv. Welcome to today's show. And, well, it's getting down to crunch time here in the Halloween season. I'm trying to get a lot of things done for this October train layout. Now, if you have been watching my morning coffee series, about 2 months ago, I was talking about how I got the idea to do a Halloween-only train layout. That the shelf layout that I usually decorate for Halloween, it's fun and all that, but I wanted something dedicated, like for Christmas. I have the Polar Express, and so I really wanted something dedicated just to Halloween. With that in mind, I wrote down all of these different components that I wanted to put in a Halloween layout, and one of them is a glowing toxic pond. Ooh. I don't know, I just like, with the black lights I have in here, that glowing effect. And hey, who doesn't love a toxic pond? You know, probably the toxic, sludge monster loves it. So today we are going to build a toxic pond. Now, here's the thing. A while back, I kind of gave it a test run. And we're going to go over kind of how I did that test run. I've had to reshoot some of the sequences. So you'll notice that one moment there's this one kind of pond that we're working on, and the next moment it's a little bit different shape and whatnot. And that's because I had to reshoot some of the sequences. I wanted to make sure we got the tutorial on how I did it right for you folks. So just kind of forgive that part of it. But the one you'll see at the very end is the very first one I did. The one on the train layout, well, we're in the process of getting that done. So we'll see how that turns out here in a few weeks. Stick with us today as we make a toxic pond for our train layout.
So before we get started on the toxic pond, well, I found that I thought it was a dark blue Bronco on my train layout, not painted. I got looking at it closer, and it's actually a Blazer, and it's very similar in year to my Blazer. I thought, I'd like to have my Blazer on the train layout. That'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it? So I got the original paint that I painted the blue Blazer, which was this Benjamin Moore industrial enamel. Thinned it out, and just like I rolled the big Blazer, so I just got out a paintbrush and poof, painted painted the little Blazer. Except for I got chrome mirrors on this one, but went ahead and did the white and the blue and detailed it up a little bit and thought, wow, it actually makes a pretty good representation of the Blazer. So here this is, and you'll see it. The reason this is kind of relevant is you'll see this in some of the sequences that I shot here on the toxic pond. So anyway, this is kind of a fun piece I have on my layout now. I have my Blazer on the layout. So we're going to start with a module that I already had, and I'll tell you in the end what this module is. It's kind of funny, but you see some like I had a little home or something there, and there's this area right by a road. I thought this will be perfect for a toxic pond, and so I've got to decide how I want it to look, and I want to have kind of like a stream running into it just off the edge there. So I'm going to have to build a little bit of a dam to represent the stream that's not actually there.
So what I've done is I've drawn out the rough shape of what it is that the shape of the pond that I want. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this old bread knife. There's other ways I could do this, but I am just going to do this. And be careful not to cut all the way through, because I don't want to go all the way through. Could do this with a foam cutting tool if I had the right one. I really don't. The one that I have is more for just cutting foam and not, you know, knocking parts out like this. So this is a mess, I know, but this is how I'm doing it. Got about halfway through there. And about halfway through there. Okay. So now I've got to just kind of get it a little bit deeper where I want it deeper. The other way you could do this is if you have fire, you could just, you know, do this. This is a good way to, you know, melt it down. And it also, well, melts it so you don't get all these beads. Okay. And just get it to the right depth that I want. And there we go. Now we're ready for the next step, which is going to be the sealing it with some silicone.
So there's a couple of ways I could have done this. I could have used like some spackle or plaster, something like that. I decided to use some caulking. Now, it was just a cheap caulking that I had. You could use clear, you could use white. I chose to use this one here. It is paintable. You've got to make sure it's paintable, because if it's just like 100% silicone, you're going to have a mess when you go to paint this.
Okay, so now I've got my silicone on, and I am just going to use a gloved finger to push it into the areas that I want it. But I want to make sure that I get everything sealed to the best of my ability, because I don't want any of the water effects to leak through. I've had that happen before on some projects, and it's not fun. So I'm going to want to, you know, work this in and get it where I want it. Now the other thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to build a little dam right here across the end so that my water does not leak out. So make sure you dam up this one end.
Okay, so here's the actual piece, and here is the caulking. And again, I gotta stress, make sure you use something that is paintable. It can't be like that 100% silicone that just, you know, everything goes up. No, it has to be paintable. So I've smeared it around. I've made the little dam over the end, and you see I'm ready to go. I am ready to paint this, and it looks like it's going to be sealed very well. So I just took some of this Craftsmart like holiday green paint, and I'm going to need to darken that because I didn't have a dark. If you have a dark green, great. I didn't, so I mixed just some black in there. And here you go. Here's the color I got, and it went on nice and smooth. It dried perfect. This was going to work very well. And again, I wanted that kind of look like there was a attached canal, if you will, to this toxic pond, like an entry canal or whatever. So what we are going to use is we are going to use just the Realistic Water by Woodland Scenics. Now make sure you've got some good fresh stuff, because one of the things that happened to me as I was reshooting is I used some old stuff and it didn't work real well. So yeah, make sure you got some nice fresh stuff there. And we're going to use this glow-in-the-dark fluorescent green paint. Again, I'm cheap, so I just use this kind of stuff. There's other stuff you could use, but this is what I had. So I got a couple of barrels from out of my parts box. I painted them up in this, it's just a rust color that I had available. You could detail these out if you wanted. I chose not to. I chose just to leave them like this. They thought they looked pretty good. And this is what I'm going to have in my pond that is causing all of the toxicity. But you can do all sorts of other things. So I take my realistic water, and after I've put my barrels in, and I just glued mine with super glue, and then I take my realistic water and I put a thin coat, just enough to cover the bottom in here. I'm going to do about 4 layers total. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of this realistic water, I'm going to put it in a mixing cup, and I'm going to put a couple of drops of my fluorescent green in the mixing cup and mix it up.
Okay, I just put a couple of little drops in there, and they've kind of spread out a bit. I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just going to kind of work them out a little bit more. And we're going to let this dry. This one's going to take a while because the base is a little bit thicker than I really had wanted to pour it, but you get the idea. So we're going to let this one dry. This is what it looks like now. We'll see what it looks like when it dries.
So in my remake piece here, you can see how this dries, this first layer. It spreads out a bit more. Everything kind of settles down a little bit. I like the effect on this one. And it's similar to what I got in the very first one that I did. So then I pour another layer, and you could put some more color in that as well. I've also experimented with putting a little bit of yellow in there. And well, here is the result of the very first one I did. This is after 4 whole pours. Now, I had a happy little accident. As I was letting this dry, I lifted it and put it up on one of the shelves to dry, and it slipped. And all of the stuff, all of the color ran to one end. Fortunately, it ran around in a counterclockwise circle. So it was a happy little accident. It makes it look like a big old glob sitting right there. Now, after I had done about 4 layers of water total, here it is. Here it is under my my special lights, and you can see it glows. And there's some little sparkles in here. I have a luminescent powder, and I sprinkled a little bit of that around. Now, you don't see it here because the lights aren't on. The black lights aren't on. This is just how it looks raw. Isn't that cool? Yeah, that's really got a deep oomph to it. Anyway, that luminescent powder will light up just a little bit here and there to kind of give it a little extra oomph. I really like how this turned out on this layout. Now, we're going to show you here in just a moment where exactly this is on the shelf layout. I think you'll get a kick out of it. It's kind of fun. So it just happens to be next to the caretaker's house, next to my school. So I thought that was kind of fun to put it, back in the 50s, this kind of happened all the time. So anyway, folks, thanks for joining us. I hope you got something out of this.